Welcome back to my channel, guys. This is the Thinking Fungus, and today it's a beautiful day outside. It's sunny, there's little to no clouds, and I thought it would be a perfect chance to talk about a positive thing once in a while, because the past videos were a little bit negative, but I was trying to talk about the dark side of things that happened to me. But I want to also be a little bit hopeful and talk about the positives. Things are very like, they have a lot of nuance. Like, it's not just good or bad. There's good things and bad things, even in positive. Why every time I have to make a video, everyone has to make a fucking sound like beep beep beep? Thank you. Okay, I thought it would be the perfect chance to make this video because today is the anniversary or month-iversary of my 7th month of sobriety. Yippee! No, actually, it's a good thing. I like it. Being sober, I used to think it was boring, but it's not, surprisingly enough. I always thought, I haven't spent 7 months sober, like 7 straight months sober, ever since I was 17 in high school, because that's when I started smoking weed, I think. So from then on, it was just, every like 2 months or so, or even like every couple months, I would smoke weed every once in a while. But I've never spent 7 straight months sober. So this is a new a new beginning for me. I feel pretty good about it because my creativity has come back, and I feel pretty good. I've been Suboxone free for almost 2 months now, and I'll be talking about MAT. Today's topic is recovery. Recovery as a drug addict. For the past month, I've been talking about the negative sides of things. But today I'm gonna focus on the work and the progress that I've made, and I'll be giving a few tips too on, if you're in my position or a similar position, if you're addicted or were addicted to opioids. If you're currently addicted, I'm sorry for you, because it's a horrible experience, both for you and for the people that you love that are thinking about you and trying to help you. I know it's hard. Trust me, I've been there, done that. But today is a new day. If I was able to make the videos, starting to make these videos about a month ago, it's because I wouldn't have been able to do them if I didn't quit Suboxone. Because Suboxone saved my life, I can say it. The people at the treatment center, for addiction treatment center, they were awesome. They treated me so well. I actually felt like they cared about me, which, when I was in the US, people are cold or community health. Not always. There's a lot of awesome people in the healthcare system in the US, but a lot of people in the US healthcare system tend to be like cold and detached, very like professional. But they were very involved here in my home country, and I actually felt like I was cared for. So my recovery was a combination of, I think, 3 or 4 things. First of all, therapy. Taking the meds, going through therapy, and going to my psychiatrist appointments. Also, I want to talk about MIT. MIT is another thing that helped me going through my recovery, and a lot of introspection. A lot of introspection. I had to dig deep into my past. The thing is, addiction for me was not the core problem of my life. It was a symptom. It's a symptom of something that wasn't working. But I will be talking about this a little later. So therapy, MIT, and introspection. These 3 things are what have been contributing to my fast recovery, because 7 months and already like I feel good and I don't feel the need to use anything, it feels great. I feel like I haven't felt like this in a long time. I have to be honest. First of all, I want to talk about the therapy side of things. The thing is, when you start your recovery as a drug addict, especially after damaging yourself, your body, the people around you, your loved ones, if you have a significant other, they suffer a lot, because when you're an addict, you don't just do damage to yourself, you do damage to everyone else around you. Everyone that loves you, struggles with your addiction too. It's not just your addiction. So don't think, oh well, it's okay because I'm the only one to suffer. No, everyone suffers when you're an addict. I had to, when you first start recovery, you deal with a lot of shame, guilt, self-hate, and I gotta say that, when I first started, I hated myself because I put my significant other, mostly, and her parents, my mom, through so much emotional damage. And the realization of that, I am a kind person and I don't want to hurt anyone, let alone people that I love. So when I was, kind of sobered up, I was like, I fucking hate myself because I hurt people that I cared for a lot. It really made me suffer. So I was ashamed of myself. I hated my actions, what I did. I know this angle for the camera is a little unflattering. It makes me feel a little bit fat, if I gotta be honest, but we're gonna have to work with it because the new thing that I printed, the phone holder that I printed, it's a little bit wonky, so I don't want to touch it too much. I'm afraid it will break. What I had to do was revisit my past, not with a shameful and self-loathing kind of, lens, but through a therapeutic lens, kind of like a cathartic lens, because I had to look at my past, and for me, the past, I am not someone who dwells a lot on the past, unless it's something really, really bad. I'm someone who just lives in the moment, and my past was always kind of a blur to me. I never really think about my childhood or my times. It's like a blur, and I couldn't really define what everything that happened. So therapy was crucial for me to be able to dig deeper and be like, okay, what did I do when I was this age? What was I doing? How was I feeling, and how did I react to situations like that? And it made me realize that I've talked about my childhood and my story in previous videos, so I'm not gonna do the same spiel here, but basically my everything starts with your childhood, where you as an adult are a product of everything that happened to you as a kid. So if you had to endure a lot of pain as a kid, you'll be a pretty strong adult. If you were a kid who was very sheltered, you're gonna be a very insecure and someone who's non-confrontational, like me. I grew up with a dad that wasn't my dad because he was my half brother's dad, but not mine, so he didn't really care a lot for me, I guess. So he mistreated me all the time. He beat me up and he belittled me, and just it made me feel like I was worth nothing. Whereas my mom was the polar opposite. She was super protective. She was always trying to protect me from every single bad thing in the world, and she was just putting me in a cocoon of safety. And I've lived with my mom more than I did with my dad, because my dad left when I was 12. So half my life I spent it with my mother basically. So the way she brought me up is the way that you know I the thing is, as I said, the reason why I got addicted and why I kept doing drugs, because I wasn't just an addict of one substance. I would do whatever substance as long as it would take me away from reality. That was my thing. I wanted to get away from reality. I didn't want to deal with it. When it got hard, I would just wanted to get high and forget all about it. That's not how you go about life. If you want to do that, sure, do that. I did that, and it was really damaging to me, and I developed a really bad addiction to opioids. Kratom, 7-OH, it's an opioid basically. Therapy especially helped me to see that, when I started not feeling the shame, a lot of shame and self, hate and a lot of regret. Of course I feel regret, but like when I say regret, I feel like self-loathing. Yeah, that's the correct word, because of course I regret what I fucking did. There's not a day that I don't think I was a fucking idiot, but it helped me realize that I didn't do what I did because I'm a bad person, but simply I was unprepared to be led into a world that didn't make sense to me. When I got out of high school, I kind of was directionless. I was always pretty directionless because people would always take decisions for me. I grew up as an autistic kid, so people just think you can't really make your own decisions because you're autistic as a kid. So they have to shelter you, make the big decisions for you, and then get out of high school and you're on your own. And now the world didn't make sense anymore to me because I just treated life after high school as my childhood. I was always at home. I kind of isolated myself. I started really dealing with the loneliness and depression. So after high school, I always treated life as, okay, everything that's outside the house is like the danger zone, and my house is the safe zone, my cocoon of safety. That's the only place where I can feel safe and where I can be myself and yada yada yada. So I just treated my life as it was my childhood basically, because I didn't know anything else. To me, life was always going to school, coming home from school, staying at home. I didn't want to self-isolate too much in high school, because then people would think, oh well, he's a social, he's an outcast and stuff like that. So yeah, the world didn't really make sense to me, and up until I was in my 20s, that's when I kind of got a little bit of an idea of how the world really works. At 23 was when I moved to the States, and life, I already wasn't really used to adulting and mature. I wasn't really mature enough to do a big move like that. So that was the culture shocks and everything. I've been to the US beforehand, but just for visits, not long term. But yeah, I wasn't prepared for adulting and the outside world and big life changes, because the life changes that were big were always managed by someone else when I was, a teenager and whatnot. So doing big decisions by myself, I became a dependent person. I just couldn't make a decision without running by external opinions of everyone else around me. I couldn't trust my own judgment. I didn't have a judgment, or my judgment was really skewed, and I didn't trust it. My dad raised me to think I'm a fucking idiot, so I can't trust my judgment, and yada yada yada. You know the drill. I became a dependent person, and I could never just make a decision by myself without consulting 1,000 fucking sources, whether it's online or people, hey, I want to do this, what's your opinion on it? This kind of stuff. I just need external validation and opinions before making any choice, and even small things. So after I came to the States and got addicted to Kratom and 7-OH, I tried, to heal, but I wasn't ready yet. I had a part of me that didn't want to let go of drugs. Like, I wanted to quit, but I wasn't ready in my brain yet. So at one point I committed myself into a rehab in Florida, and the rehab was fantastic. The experience, they detoxed me, which was good, and I felt good afterwards. But they put me on MAT for the first time. That's when I got introduced to Suboxone and Subutex, and they're the same thing. They're just two names for the same thing. It's just a minor difference, but it's the same thing. That's when I got introduced to Suboxone and all that stuff. And when I started the Suboxone, I'm not gonna lie, I actually was like, okay, I'm feeling something is changing, and my life got a little better. I was doing better at work. There's a thing, a myth that if you do Suboxone, you're just trading a drug for another. But for me, Suboxone wasn't just a substitute for Kratom, because it didn't really get me high. It just took the need that I felt, to take 7-OH away from my, from my brain, because the way it works, it just saturates your opioid receptors, and your brain is like, yep, I'm good. No need for opioids for now. So when you take it, you just feel normal, and you don't feel withdrawals, and you don't feel the need like a fiend, to go take another dose. You're just okay. I did good for a while on Suboxone and on my other meds, but when the Suboxone ran out because of fucking stupid Florida laws where your psychiatrist needs to be exactly in your town, because mine was in a faraway town, basically. They were like, yeah, we can't give you the Suboxone, and you need to be in a place where, like, your therapist needs to be in your town, like your psychiatrist needs to be in your town. And if you live in the States, you know how hard it can be to become a patient of a psychiatrist. It's pretty hard to find one in your hometown. It's not that easy. It's not that easy here as well, either. So in the US, it's even harder. So I couldn't do that because the wait lists were fucking huge, and I couldn't go that long without Suboxone. So eventually I started using again because I couldn't stand the fucking withdrawals. And rinse and repeat. I didn't fucking learn anything from my rehab. I wanted good. I had good intent. I wanted rehab. I wanted to pay those $2,000 to go to rehab and be like, okay, they're gonna put me on MAT, and I'm gonna be okay. That was my mentality. I wanted to fucking quit it, but the fiend mentality took over again once I ran out of Suboxone, because it was like, yeah, I'm not gonna fucking deal with the withdrawals. I'd rather just get high or get normal, since at one point you don't really get that high anymore. You just feel okay. So when I came back after a disastrous failure, with my drug use, spiraled down after rehab consistently, worse and worse and worse, until I reached rock bottom. And I burnt my girlfriend out, who was always trying to protect me and help me, and I was draining her of all of her energies, and I made her like a soulless husk of what she used to be, because I burnt her out. I was a terrible person. I was a terrible boyfriend for her. I wasn't there for her all, I wasn't consistent with my love and my gifts and my, what you're supposed to do as a boyfriend, providing and caring. You can't do that as an addict. You cannot. I couldn't have started this video series without quitting Suboxone. I'm gonna say this because Suboxone is really great, but it kind of like it still it hits your opioid receptors. So your opioids, it kind of acts like an opioid technically because it hits the receptors, but it doesn't get you high. But either way, opioids, what they do is they make you content with doing nothing. Boredom feels good, right? So I didn't want to do anything when I was on Suboxone. I had to drink energy drinks to do stuff, which was another problem. Waking up every day consistently, in the past 3 to 4 months, and not feeling the itch and not feeling that panic or how am I gonna get my dose today? What am I gonna have to do? When I couldn't get my dose for the day, I wasn't an everyday user. I would use every 2 days or 3 days, and when the withdrawals were really bad, I would scrape whatever I could find or borrow money because I just couldn't take it. I would get all shaky and I would pace around the room. I felt like my anxiety spike up, and I would toss around and be like, I need my fucking dose. I would sweat. I couldn't sleep. My withdrawals were fucking horrible, and I would do anything to not get them at the time. But now I can sleep and I can wake up at a normal, time of day, and I don't feel that itch, that panic. I don't feel that anxiety anymore. I don't feel the need to use anything, and it's great. I feel great, and I'm so grateful, for the people at the recovery center. They were fucking great. Here in my home country, they were great people. Especially one guy, he really cares about me, and I can tell. Now, I'm not a doctor, so definitely do not just take my opinion for this. Take it with a grain of salt. But I'm gonna talk about tips for MAT and all that stuff. Do not try to taper. Do not try to taper alone. Don't try to taper by yourself using your own means. Do a medical proper taper. Ask leave it to the professionals to have you taper the drug, because if not, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have a leap in judgment and be like, today I'm gonna just fucking do more because I feel like it. Do not do it on yourself. You're an addict. You can't fucking trust your own judgment. So do not jump off your meds without a plan. And for the love of God, do not jump off Suboxone or without a plan. Because if you just quit it, you can't just cold turkey it, or you're gonna be fucking miserable for the next two months or 3 months. The withdrawals are very long. They weren't for me because I did a proper medical taper. So do that. Also, before you taper your dose of whatever you're taking for MAT, whether it's Suboxone, Subutex, or even methadone, you need to have a mindset. You need to have a specific mindset. You can't just be like, okay, I feel pretty good now, I can taper off. You need to be sure that you're not thinking about doing drugs anymore. You need to feel ready for sobriety before starting the taper. And actually, the taper, my taper wasn't even suggested by me to the doctors. It was suggested by the doctors because they saw how good I was doing. I was super consistent. My tests were always clean. my like pee tests were always clean, and they were like, you're doing really, really good. We think, it could be a good time to jump off. And I was like, that actually sounds like a good idea, because I do feel good. I don't feel really any idea. I didn't have any idea of starting again, like to use drugs when I quit Suboxone. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I think 1 or 2 weeks later, I started the taper. I was on 8 milligrams per day, and then I went to 6, and then 4, and then 2, and then I stopped. I was miserable for 2 to 3 weeks. I was a little sicky, and I was like, I had to show up to work, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. you know that feeling. Also, having a psychiatrist and a therapist is non-negotiable if you're doing a taper, because when you go through a taper, it's not an easy, smooth experience. You're gonna feel, the difference of going down, especially, when you go to 4 or 2 milligrams, and you can feel the difference, and you can have, in my case, I was overly emotional sometimes, and I remember, I wanted to, in that period, that's when I started to text every person I had wronged, because I was working on the 12 steps of an ANA, Narcotics Anonymous, and I was in the step of apologizing and telling the truth to all the people that I wronged during my addiction. And I was texting everyone and being like, I'm sorry, I did this and this and this. I did it with my uncle and aunt. I did it with my roommate, everyone that I knew that I wronged, and my girlfriend's parents too. And I was writing very, very emotionally, which was kind of cringe then when I read it like 1 or 2 months later, because I was like, I that's very dramatic. I don't know if I should have said all of that, in that way. That was very dramatic. You need to be stable, ask your therapist or your psychiatrist to put you on something to stabilize your mood, because your mood, you're gonna experience severe mood swings. Like you're gonna be that's what quitting Suboxone does to you. It doesn't really it didn't really make me super depressed or anything, but I would be like, I feel like shit, because I was feeling a little bit sick, and like sometimes I would get a little sad, but then the day later I was okay. I was not it was not, my emotions were not very consistent, but it wasn't like, so it's not like a bipolar kind of cycle. It was more like day to day. I'm almost 26 now, and I don't have almost any friends. I don't have the life that I used to have, that I was trying to build anymore. My family is broken and displaced, but for the first time I have a foundation. I feel like I have a foundation that is not built on lies, manipulation, and all that stuff. I feel like I am finally back to being myself, and I haven't felt like truly myself ever since I started, doing drugs at 17 years old. And now I feel ready to take on the world again, and not as a character, but just as me. I feel like me again. If you're really, really struggling with opioid abuse, I would look, again, I'm not a doctor, but if your case is really severe, you should, it's not for everyone, but you should look into MAT, because it saved my life and it could save yours. Again, it's not for everyone. MAT is not for everyone. Some people do methadone for extreme cases, very compulsive cases. In my case wasn't very compulsive and like every day, and I was kind of a late bloomer when it comes to opioids. Most like opioid users started when they were fucking like 15, 16, and I tried them when I was 23, 24, I don't remember. Either way, I was a late bloomer, and I had at least the maturity to recognize the problem soon. After a few months, I was like, okay, this might become a problem, and I identified the problem, but I couldn't really do much to resolve it properly because I didn't have the full maturity, and I had really bad coping mechanisms and skills. I couldn't deal with, repeated, constant life changes. Again, because I'm autistic, I'm very rigid. I have to I need space before I deal with changes, and in that period it was like one after another after another after another. It was like non-stop, and I was like, fuck. My anxiety was at 1,000, and I didn't know what to do, so I became a drug addict. So please look into therapy. You're not alone. Other people have been through this, and you'll be okay. You have to be ready to take that step. Get into MAT if your case is really bad. And the thing is, addiction is a sickness. It's a mental sickness. You have to treat it medically. It's not a willpower trial. It's a medical thing. You need to treat it medically. So look into MAT if you're an opioid abuser and you really need help. And I really wish you the very best. To close this video, I would like to say to whoever's watching, thank you. Thank you. Even though you don't comment or you don't put a like on this video, it really means a lot if you watched it, even a fraction of it. I just want to put a message out there that you're not alone, and that my recovery was not the same as yours is gonna be. Everyone's different, and I'm satisfied with what I did, and I feel clean, I feel prepared, I feel like I have more tools in my disposal, more maturity to take on life, and I'm ready to take on the world again. And it was only possible by reaching rock bottom. Sometimes you have to really reach that bottom to recognize that you have to change. Some people don't get that chance. Thank you for watching this video, and if you're in a situation like mine or even worse, please reach out. Comment below if something like that has happened to you, and we can do this. You can do this. You just have to believe in what your goal needs to be. If you really care about your life, reach out. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.